This year at Brighton Women's Centre, we have been celebrating our 50th birthday. Looking back at our history, we've seen a tale of tenacity, strength, and most of all, survival. BWC has weathered many storms and encountered many highs and lows. This is also the story of women's fight for equality over the past 5 decades. Today, you'll hear from Anna Herrmann, Joint CEO and Artistic Director of Clean Break, an organisation founded in 1979 by 2 women prisoners who believed in the transformative power of theatre to change lives. This year's International Women's Day campaign theme is Accelerate Action, emphasising the importance of taking swift and decisive steps to achieve gender equality. What action for women is Clean Break keen to see accelerated this year?
I'm really keen that we stop sending women to prison and stop using imprisonment as a punishment for women who are caught up in the criminal justice system. Women's offences, we know them to be connected largely to poverty, to experiences of poor mental health, of drug and alcohol addiction, of coercion, of domestic violence. Women in our prisons have backgrounds often of abuse from childhood and adult abuse, and it's not a safe place. It's a place where self-harm is incredibly high and where women are dying in our prisons as well. We know there are better community solutions that can support women in their community, not separate them from their families, from children, from their communities, not leave them end up losing their houses. And we've built those resources and community solutions over decades of specialist expertise and practice, and we need to really invest in them and to stop the imprisonment of women. That's the thing that I'd most like to be accelerated this year.
But thinking broader for gender equity around the world, I feel there is so many countries and places in the world where women are on the harshest end of violence and war and oppression, where women aren't able to go. Girls don't go to school, still aren't able to get an education. So although I see it with the Clean Breaks lens, quite specific to the UK and quite specific to our criminal justice system, it's all part of the same tapestry of gender equity worldwide. So from a kind of global feminist perspective, there is so much change that I want us to move forward on around FGM, around abuse and violence, and around women and girls who are victims of war.
Clean Break gives voice to women's experiences of the criminal justice system. Can you tell us about the importance of these unheard voices for better understanding women's history?
Yeah, I think the women who tend to populate our prison system tend to be women who are with obviously generalization. I'm making a generalization, and there are women who don't fit in the category, but by and large, they're women who are poor. There's a disproportionate amount of Black women, of migrant women, of women with mental health needs. There's a whole section of community and of women's stories and histories that you shine a light on if you tell those women's stories that aren't part of the mainstream, that aren't the stories of women's histories that we may well get in the history books, even though those stories are also kind of marginalized from a predominantly patriarchal and kind of male perspective. So by telling these stories, we understand that women aren't homogenous. There isn't one woman's story, one woman's history. Our histories are intersectional. They're nuanced, and it's really important to have a sense of that as we look back on women's history. They're also really important to understand women's struggle and to be inspired and to know that we are standing on the shoulders of amazing women who have come before us, who have created change, who have pushed forward equity for women, and who have done that in real adversity. And it's those stories that I want to really shine a light on and be inspired by.
What role can the arts and creativity play as a transformative power in women's lives?
The arts as such a powerful tool, both for those participating in making art, as well as for us as audiences seeing art. So I know through the work that we've been doing at Clean Break for 46 years that and through the women that we work with, both in prisons and in women's centres and at our studios in Kentish Town in North London, that making theatre, working as a group with other women, unlocks creativity, self-expression, helps women find confidence, reduces isolation as women build relationships and form friendships that can really support them. It offers women, particularly women who have been affected by the criminal justice system and who have experienced stigma and judgment and who have been labelled, it offers the opportunity to open up new identities. The identity of artist, of is really significant for people who have had that experience of negative labels. I think the arts can also create career pathways for women who might never have anticipated that there are possibilities and opportunities for new careers in the arts. And I think that the arts can create, for all of us, the arts provide an opportunity for new understanding, to understand our experiences differently, to understand the world differently, and to imagine the world differently. So it's a real gift to see how we have very entrenched inequalities in this country, facing women with gender inequality. Through the arts, we can create and imagine different ways of being and different ways of surviving that. Also, the arts and theatre and making work is really joyful. It can be really, really joyful, and that is hugely essential for all of us. So yes, I think it can play a transformative way in that. It's a way of healing as well, and transforming past trauma and past really difficult life circumstances and turning it into something that can inspire and mobilize and galvanize others.
BWC turned 50 during the last year, a milestone that Clean Break are due to reach in a couple of years too. What have Clean Break seen change for the better for the women and the communities that you do work with, and what still needs to happen?
Happy birthday to the Brighton Women's Centre. That's an important milestone. Yes, and for a company that is approaching that, it's a real moment, isn't it, to kind of reflect on what has changed for the better. I've been with Clean Break for about 23 years, and when I came into this sector and this work, there was the kind of idea that women had different needs, had and that the idea that women had different needs and that their needs weren't met by the system was kind of quite was being articulated and vocalized quite clearly, but the sense of the alternatives, the sense of there being a kind of really resilient and robust women's sector that could provide support and could offer women alternatives to incarceration and could help with their kind of lived experiences of trauma wasn't mainstream. So places like Brighton Women's Centre were the kind of outliers. There wasn't a real network of women's centres, and now post Causton in 2007, that's obviously one of the key changes, is that there is this vibrant, although struggling because of resources and funding, but a vibrant network of women's organisations by and for women, and the kind of hallowed women only spaces and the recognition of those spaces being really essential for women. That's become more understood, and it's not disputed in the same way that it was when I entered the sector. So I think that that's an important change. I think that in the news, obviously the recent news about women being shackled during labour, a practice that was that was ended decades ago, supposedly ended decades ago. The fact that that it's become evident that these things continue to happen, and these injustices continue to happen. Women continue to be overpopulated in our prisons. Self-harm continues to escalate. These are real. It's infuriating that we haven't made better change for women in the way that they're treated in those respects. So I think there were some positives. It definitely feel like, and at the moment, particularly with the Women's Justice Board and with the Justice Secretary really declaring that they want to reduce the women's prison population, there feels an opportunity for more change to come. So it feels that this moment we could really signal more change. I hope to be optimistic about that. We've obviously had moments like that in the past around the Corsten report where it was very clear there that the evidence indicated that prison wasn't a safe place for women, but we didn't see the change that we wanted. So I hope that this is a moment where we will.
At BWC, one of the key impacts we hope to have is that the women we work with feel more hopeful. What makes you hopeful for women at the moment?
I have the good fortune to work in a building which, similar to yourself, which is full of women who come to take part in making theatre, in changing their lives, changing their families' lives. I work alongside women, my colleagues, who are all passionate and committed to equity for women and to change in the system. And that as a daily practice makes me hopeful, because it is that feeds my soul and feeds the work that I do. It's the same when I go and work in prisons and work with a group of women who, again, against adversity, bring themselves, their generosity, their stories, their ideas, their imagination. We play together, we create together. Those are really, really hopeful moments. And it's something to do with why, as a theatre maker, working for an organisation with a really strong social justice mission, I feel really able to feel hopeful and optimistic because of the women the women that I work with on a day-to-day basis, and because of the partners that we work with. The women's sector, obviously, just having an International Women's Day was an example of that. I spent the day at Doughty Street Chambers celebrating International Women's Day with them in a room full of really impassioned and creative and smart women thinking about what needs to change and being galvanized by that change. I then had the pleasure of going to listen to Angela Davis talk in the evening at the Royal Albert Hall and sitting amongst 4,000 women and allies, all motivated for change. And those are the things that kind of keep me moving forward and feeling really optimistic and feeling that change is possible.